Live. Now it says we're live.
Okay. Welcome all over the world for another episode of the transatlantic conversation between David Rorix and me, Frank. And today we both have a little bit the same background. It's the black background, and the frame sizing is also a little bit in common. So
We're
our
moving up
little
in the
show
world.
is a little bit improving. So I start with David, and he has a fantastic new haircut. And how are you doing, David?
Good. My pandemic haircut was getting really totally out of control. It was like everybody was calling me Einstein around here, and so it was definitely time for a haircut. And
So you
and
look
then
a little bit dangerous. So
if it's the bald look, especially with the camera angle with the webcam coming, it's kind of coming down a bit, really emphasizing that bald effect. Yeah, but
so
we are.
I just have a little bit hair
Oh,
there. So
nice,
I don't
nice.
I don't want to cut them all off
I
because
like it.
then we are too much the same, I think.
Absolutely. We're definitely improving the production values, though. Excellent. Both black
So,
curtains.
people are all around the world. If you want to vote for another suggestion for the Academy Award,
Oh, here we
Best
go. Yeah,
Live Broadcast, so I think we are in the game.
absolutely. Absolutely. Got to be in the top 100.
So, David, how is it going in Portland? What's
Oh,
the
man.
latest news?
Well, I guess the vaccine's getting around. So, I mean, I guess probably both my parents got vaccine since the last time we talked, I think, and a lot of other people. I mean, I keep on lots of medical workers and senior citizens getting vaccinated. So that's kind of, big news for a lot of people, I suppose. Otherwise, what's going on? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on, really. But I mean, in the U.S. Congress, they just passed this $1.9 trillion spending package to try to, prevent an eviction crisis and to help extend unemployment and all kinds of other stuff. I'm sure a lot of it goes to corporations, but it seems to largely be going to things that will be helpful for regular people to survive. So looks like capitalism is saving itself from disaster once again, as far as I can tell.
Okay, on the one hand, it's good, and on the other hand, it's bad. But okay, if the things are improving due to the pandemic situation, I think it will be good for everyone.
I mean,
And
it's very much wait, and it's definitely like a wait and see kind of thing. As far as I mean, they're spending
yeah,
a hell of a lot of money, but then again, if it's all going to the places it needs to go, it's another question entirely. I mean, we'll see. I mean, certainly the unemployment money.
yeah.
I can say that some of it's going in here, right here to this apartment. So that's I don't know where else it's going, but some of it is reaching actually unemployed people. I can say that for sure.
So you have got $1.9 billion and don't know what to do with the money. So
1.9 trillion.
trillion.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
This is 10% the size of the U.S. economy. Is this the
okay.
amount of money they're going to spend? I thought the U.S. economy wasn't even that big, but apparently it's bigger. But yeah,
So I always think, how will they organize the money? Is there a danger that there will be an, I don't know the English word, inflation, if
yeah.
money is nothing worth anymore, you know?
Yeah, right. Well, I think that's the problem with printing money is the risk
Yeah.
of inflation. I mean, that's the problem for most of the world when they just print money. And I think the United States is in a more unusual position. And I'm not an economist, but as I understand it, I mean, the U.S. The dollar is the world's reserve currency still, and the main one. And so the U.S. is the only country that I think that can just like print money and like it doesn't have the same kinds of risks of inflation that other countries face because that aren't the currency everybody else in the world is investing in. I don't know. I think something about the U.S. being having the main currency people invest in around the world gives the U.S. economy a lot of extra protection that it shouldn't really necessarily have, or that a lot of the rest of the world doesn't necessarily have. But I think one thing I think if the U.S. were to keep on spending like that, then eventually the world would lose faith in the U.S. dollar, and then would not use the U.S. as dollar as the main reserve currency. That's the thing they talk about happening at some point, but it doesn't seem to happen. But maybe at some point it will, right? And the euro, or the Chinese yuan or something will be the main reserve currency in the world. But I don't understand the interest in investing in U.S. dollars, but it's still a very popular thing to buy in this in the world. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the Chinese government buys U.S. dollars kind of because they have to, because there's such a massive trade imbalance. What are they going to do with all that extra money? But buy U.S. dollars. It's a very very strange situation.
I don't either understand all the stock exchange things. I worked at the stock exchange in Stuttgart for about 1 year as a cameraman.
Great.
So it was very interesting because so I got a little bit in that business, how these people act. They're just sitting there all day long, have got 8 flat screens, eating while they are looking at the stock exchange numbers. And Donald Trump is a good friend of them. If the DAX, so the German Dow Jones, is going up, and if it's going down, he's not so good. And it's in a world I don't understand, but it was interesting to work there for a little time.
Yeah, sociologically, just to see how people are, and what does the stock exchange need a camera person for? What are you doing there with the camera?
The stock exchange market in Stuttgart, they have got an own YouTube channel, and once a week they go live on television. So broadcasting live at NTV. It's like CNN. It's the same in Germany. So I think they have got a little bit a relationship. And then for 2 minutes, somebody talks about how certain stock exchanges developing. And so, but it was, for me, it was good because I learned a lot about camera working, but I wouldn't change with nobody there. Also, if they got 10,000 times the money that I have, that's so. I don't understand how you could bet on the fall of a country, and these
Right.
people. I don't know why they act, and so just thinking about the money. And so if you got a lot of money, what do? You buy a silly car that.
Yeah, the value system of
I
like,
don't.
why would you spend all your time like doing things like trading stocks, and I mean, because in the end you're spending all your time in some stock exchange or some big glass and steel building, and you're pushing these numbers around, and maybe you're getting rich, but then what is your life all about? I mean, I just don't understand what motivates people to do that. But then again, maybe I just haven't suffered enough or something, because maybe it feels like maybe a kind of a very privileged position for me to be saying, like, I don't understand why people would just work such a meaningless job, because of course, probably maybe most people in the world, whether they're whether they're working for a stock exchange, or working in a coal mine, or working, picking tomatoes, they're doing a job that they probably would rather not be doing, and but and some of them are getting very rich doing it, and others are not. But to me, working in a stock exchange just sounds about I don't know. I mean, I've never worked in a stock exchange and I've never picked tomatoes. But if I had to, I mean, and I don't want to get sprayed with pesticides. So I guess I'd have to say, yeah, okay, I'd rather work in a stock exchange than pick tomatoes that are not organic. But if it's a choice between picking organic tomatoes and working in a stock exchange, I'm sure I'd rather pick tomatoes. I don't know. No, I hope nobody feels insulted by that statement. But I mean, it just does. It sounds better to me actually picking tomatoes compared to working as stock. Oh, like I'm sure I'd get tired of the money from picking tomatoes, and I'd prefer to make the money at the stock exchange. To
Yes,
to pick tomatoes and get paid six figures. Now that sounds much better.
but as you said, there are a lot of people out there. So we are perhaps privileged people that could do something, not just worrying about the money, and it's not we're not starving to death, but there are people out there that work very hard, so they couldn't deal with questions about politics, about society like we do.
Hmm.
So sometimes you think, why don't they do anything? And then you think, okay, they have their jobs, and the capitalism is a system that steals them their time. So I think we could do change something if we don't have to work for our living. So I think that's the big problem, and I think a lot of people uh, uh, doesn't like capitalism. They don't. They are not anarchists. They are not talking like we do, but they, in their deep mind, they think this system is not working.
They know. I mean, on some level, I think loads of people. I mean, the stock exchange and whether they're working for the stock exchange or in so many other places, they're suffering from depression and anxiety and imposter syndrome, and they're feeling isolated from other people, and they're not happy. They're not, I mean, I think unhappiness is pretty common among all kinds of different people working in lots of different professions. I think they're looking for answers. They know there's something wrong, and of course they know that the environment needs to be taken care of, and that capitalism is failing to do that. I mean, I think there's a lot of people really asking questions, but they're kind of stuck with the system. We all are, and then we try to deal with that and come to terms with that one form or another. And yeah, I think there's a lot of dissatisfaction out there, though. I think what was it? I mean, I love that quote of Thoreau, who said, "Most people, most men," he said, "most people live lives of quiet desperation." I think that really covers a lot of ground.
Uh, it's uh, it's like you're been educated. So my parents and perhaps your parents, they've been educated. My parents, they were born in the Second World War, so they know what it means to get bombs thrown on their houses, and for them it's important to make their living, and so they don't care about such things like uh, depressions and what all they don't talk about it. So and
Yeah.
we've got now another generation, and some of these problems they have, they giving further to you now, and now there's something like psychological help and so, and you try to I try to understand my parents. They want my best, but in former times they don't see me. They also said, "Yeah, get a job. Doesn't matter how much money. It doesn't matter if it's good for you. It's just to have a safe ground, you know."
Yep.
And
Sure.
now they are realizing it's good that you do your own way.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't condemn them. I realize there is this is another generation, this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So your parents get vaccinated twice already,
Yeah, I
or
think they've both gotten their second doses now. Yeah. Yeah.
oh, my parents got their first doses, and now in March the second. But here in Germany, it's very I don't know what the politician always say. There comes something vaccination, and then they say they've got new tests, and whether a further week everything changed, and now they have got restrictions due to the numbers of infections, and it's very different between all the states here in Germany, and nobody knows what to do and what not to do. So it's very it's a very clear situation, and big companies, big supermarkets, Lufthansa, Deutsche Bahn, and they all get to be opened, and all these little shops, cinemas, and so they don't open, and all the virus experts, they say the infection is mostly there in the private room and not so much in public or outside. So I think it's always the same. The big ones, they get everything, and Mercedes-Benz here in Stuttgart, they got a lot of money from the government, and as a thank you to that, they fire a lot of people, and they make more money this year than in 2020 than in 2019.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's, but in Stuttgart there is Daimler-Benz and Porsche, and if these companies say anything, doesn't matter who's the mayor. So we have got a mayor now, but he is from the Green Party, but he acts like a conservative, and they would never say anything against these big car manufacturers.
Right. Yeah. They have a lot of power. I mean, that's like 10% of the German economy, and then more, really, if you consider all the other elements that are involved with the car industry. But it's a big, powerful industry
But
there.
yesterday I watched a live stream from some people in Tübingen. There are a lot of students and so on, also from the alternative scene, and they talked about also the lockdown for all the people that are working in the business, like concerts and artists and so. And these people working there are in Germany about 1 million people that have anything to do with that. 1 million jobs.
Wow.
And in the car manufacturing area, there are just 800,000. So more people are working in these business that don't get any aid, and less people in the car manufacturer area. But the government is always the car manufacturers are always their big friends. So
Yeah. Big companies and big unions also,
yes.
right?
And the unions here in Germany, I don't call them unions. These are they quarrel about the units quarrel with the with big bosses about 1 or 2% more wages, but it's not like a really union like
Not
we
not in
think.
the sense that you think of, like
Yeah.
in the sense of like class conflict, like 100 years ago here, or like British unionism, which is much more confrontational. But like in Germany and in Scandinavia too, unionism is a much different phenomenon, right? I mean, the union officials are on the board with the corporate officials making decisions together in Germany. And I mean, that's
Okay.
that's not a familiar thing for a lot of people in the world, but it's a very different model. And of course, you have fairly prosperous workers in Germany to sort of make the case, I guess, that the model is maybe a pretty good one compared to how it could be. I mean, Germany is doing quite well with this compared to many other countries.
Yeah, okay. I we have got a high standard of living, and we have got no, we don't have a democracy, but we have something between
Yeah,
democracy.
like what is democracy, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
okay, that's
there's this voting, right? But it's like, of course, money has such a massive influence, and I mean, they like to say that. I mean, this country democracy is so completely corrupt, obviously, totally, with money so obviously part of the thing. But then even in a country like Germany, where money is less obviously part of the system, still, who can form a political party that wins elections? You have to have a lot of backing, a lot of support, a lot of money, right? So it ends up still being, maybe a democracy, but very much with a lot more power in the hands of the rich, right, and the corporate elite and the lobbyists in Brussels.
but my problem is we don't want a democracy. We want something that everyone is equal and everyone has the same power. But if you just say, okay, we have got a real democracy like it's in our basic laws, then we say, okay, the people, they choose their government. Okay, there's a government. It's okay. But if the people are the ones that should control the government, it's not possible. You gave a party in the election, you give them their cross, and then for 4 years they could do whatever they like. So it would be a improvement if you say, okay, I vote for you because you uh, build more train stations, or I don't know. And you say, okay, uh, if you don't do that, you have to say why you not do it, and if you don't want to do it, you have to be replaced. So that would be for me a democracy. But what we have is not a democracy because there is no control of the people. You
No
know?
real accountability. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. People are elected they say what they're going to do and then they don't do it. Like Biden right now. And here, I mean, he said he ran on the platform frequently speaking about the $15 an hour minimum wage. And then he's only been in power now for what, 2 months, and he's already given up on that. So,
So
uh,
yeah.
yeah. This new bill that they are passing, this $1.9 trillion bill, they say in order to get it passed, they had to give up on the minimum wage. But I don't think they had to give up on it. And they could have tried much harder to sell the idea that we need a $15 an hour minimum wage. But they basically just gave up on it. So, yeah, there's your, politicians making these promises, getting elected on these promises that they then, you know, don't follow up on, so quickly. They
But the problem is
fail.
also that the people uh, believe it. They say, okay, this party has done not the things that I wanted them to do. So next time I vote for the other ones. And then
Yeah.
they don't do what you want. And
Yeah.
then I vote for the other ones.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
at least in
so
Germany, there are more than two options, but still, yeah, it's the same
uh,
problem,
and then
and it's yeah, of course,
I
people.
say,
Some
okay,
people believe it, other people don't believe it. The media talks about it like it they can be believed. I think the media is really here at least. The media is most of the media is very responsible for playing this game that's where they act like the politicians' promises are real, but they should know better. They should have some background information here. Like they're lying all the time. They're breaking their promises all the time. That should be the first thing they say when they quote a politician. Well, this politician has failed to, deliver on his promises for the past 20 years or whatever he's been in Congress. So we shouldn't really believe him when he says this, but this is what he says. They don't say it that way. They say, he's made this promise and they have these positions, and it's like, of course they're going to do what they say, obviously, but no, they don't. They don't do what they say. That should be obvious, but
It should be. So I think it's not so difficult to understand this. So if you say, okay, you have to be very high educated to understand it, I think everybody could understand this. And here in Germany, a lot of people say, okay, politicians, they are lying, but in other countries of the world, they're also lying. So, that is how the system works. And
well,
that,
that's
yeah,
true.
why?
I mean,
Why? Well, yeah, yes, but we the people, we have a power to change something, and a lot of people say, "Oh, we couldn't do anything because
no,
there."
yeah, and you need optimism. That's such
Yeah,
the problem, right? I mean,
yeah,
if you're going to have a social movement that's going to do anything, it needs to have lots of people believing that this is possible. And that's if people are too cynical to believe that it's change is possible, and they think that this is the best that can be done, then of course change won't happen. But and then of course, if lots of people do believe change is possible and have a strategy in mind for making it happen, then it's possible. But that doesn't mean it will happen. It just means the window is open and the possibility is there. And then of course the forces of repression and division and concession will come down upon you like a ton of bricks.
yeah. But I think it's important to be optimistic and to
Definitely.
say, okay, there are minor steps that you can follow, and we couldn't change the world in one day, but we can change a little bit. So how is your friend, Mr. Donald Trump? Now he's coming through the back door and getting back to power in a few years, or what do you think? What he's doing?
I mean, I don't know. It's like I don't know. To me, and I don't know how it is for everybody else, but it just seems like we were hearing about what Donald Trump was tweeting about on the news every day
Yeah,
for years now, and he doesn't have Twitter anymore. And if he's on any other social media platform, I don't know which one, and nobody in the media, at least in the media that I listen to, is following him on that platform. And I guess they think it's irrelevant. If he doesn't have enough followers, then I don't know. But, we're not hearing about him now. So not so much, not every day. So, I mean, but certainly we're hearing that he's still very influential in the Republican Party, and we're hearing about all these conspiracies and these planned attacks on the Capitol, but it's all very much more mysterious than it was even a month ago, because now all these people have been taken off of Twitter and Facebook, along with many of my friends in many different countries who have also been taken off of Twitter and Facebook, who are not involved with any kind of QAnon stuff or any kind of hate groups or anything. They're just involved with very mainstream, really relatively mainstream socialist groups like the Socialist Workers' Party and all in Britain, and many other places, and like many socialists and anarchists in Greece who are not advocates of violence, and they're being taken. They're getting their platforms taken away as well on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. And so I don't miss Trump having a platform on Twitter, but now that he's not there, it's a lot. And now that so many others are not there, it seems a lot less clear what is happening and what I don't know if just taking away all their platforms is what impact that will have. I don't know. I mean, this is new. I mean, I guess it's for all of us. It's pretty much new ground. I guess nobody knows really because we've never been here before, where we've been, where a few anti-social media platforms control most of our communication and decide to take away the platforms of thousands and thousands of people. I guess that's just never been happened before. So we don't know what that is going to do. But it's just very alarming and disturbing to me how much power these companies have, and not only in the United States but around the world. I mean, I'm just constantly hearing stories about posts on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube going viral in the most horrible ways, and the most horrible disinformation and hate and lies and racist stuff being spread that leads directly to horrible acts of violence all over the world. This is constantly happening. And it's just got to stop. And, it's really, really, and of course it affects our society and the political debate and the elections and all sorts of things. But it also affects whether things like pogroms happen in places like, around the world, whether we're, Sri Lanka, Malaysia. I mean, you could just go around the world, and Egypt, and the influence that these social media companies have had on life on the street and on spreading lies that lead to mass attacks, ethnic, race, or other kinds of attacks, based on these kinds of lies and false ideas about other people. This is just, these platforms are so dangerous.
I think it's it's really hard. I think censorship is also not a thing to change everything. Also
No,
not due
it's
to
the algorithms that are
yeah.
the most dangerous, I think. To me, it's the algorithms more than whether they have somebody on or not, whether they platform somebody or deplatform somebody. The question of the algorithms, why is it that we see the lies more than the truth on these platforms? That's algorithms. That's because they think that we want to keep watching lies, and that's going to keep us glued to the screen more, which apparently it will. And so that's better, because it's more money. Because that's their whole bottom line, right? Keep you glued to the screen. Whatever will keep you glued to the screen. If it's lies, violence, sex, whatever will do it, keep you glued to the screen. But if it's just a couple of people having a boring conversation about reality, you know, that doesn't drive the algorithms.
So I think the yes, if you talk about the algorithms, is if you are on Facebook, you just get friends that are always in the same opinion of you. So I think if you're right-wing people, you just get the post from the Nazis. So I think they just these social media really separates the people more, because they won't get in touch with someone who's of a different opinion. And I think all the censorship is not leading to anything. Also, if you say, okay, here in Germany, you say these party is forbidden because it's a right-wing party. So they go into the underground. They have their connections, and it's not changing anything. The best example is the SPD in the 19th century, where Bismarck has forbidden the SPD, and after it was allowed again, they got the most votes. So I think you have to stand other opinions, but if they say lead to violence or such things, okay, that's another opinion. But you have to deal with these things. You just can say they're not allowed to say anything anymore. So
Yeah, I agree. I think it's scary, all the taking away of platforms, taking away of people's accounts and all this. It's just very very disturbing in so many ways, and it's not addressing the main problem, because it's the media that's been platforming people like Trump for decades,
Yeah.
and then the media is not taking any responsibility. I mean, they're just saying they're basically just blaming Twitter and Facebook, and the media needs to take responsibility for allowing this guy to have 100, 200 million Twitter followers in the first place, but then I think the other big problem is the algorithms, because and because it's not just the echo chamber thing. There's part of that's a big thing that you're talking about, where you only see people that you agree with. The other thing is you only see really oversimplified statements. Like, you won't see, if you share a lengthy post or an essay, it might get a lot of attention if it's written directly on Facebook. If it's a link, it'll get no attention. But if it's a one or two paragraph rant, where you're eloquently saying something that you feel very strongly about, then more likely people will see it. So, I mean, it just is always, the debate always is tending towards being simplistic, and overly simplistic, and I think in many ways, because it's basically a text based platform. These platforms, we're mostly talking about text conversations. It's just inadequate for any kind of serious discussion. First of all, because all kinds of people come in who really have no clue about the discussion and just kind of drop little bombs in the discussion threads, who are, who basically have no place being part of the discussion, right? But then also, even for the people who really belong in the discussion thread, you're talking only with words and not with nuance, like the sound of your voice, or facial expressions, and so things just get lost, and people just get defensive, and they take everything in a way that's meant, that's not how it's usually meant, and arguments just tend. It's just, these platforms are not well organized, and they're based on these really terrible algorithms, and the algorithms shouldn't exist, I think. But if they are going to exist, they should be transparent, and we should all understand how they work, and we should actually have democratic control over them. I think in some way, they should be somehow regulated. And I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but it shouldn't be up to these billionaires to determine these things. That's for sure. It shouldn't be up to them. Bezos and Zuckerberg should not be controlling the world.
Yes, should be. There are a lot of things that shouldn't be, but they happen. What you say about the simplification, so that's also if you have I don't know what's if two parties are quarreling for the government, how it's called, it's Wahlkampf.
Like, like an election, or
Yeah, and before the election there is
a campaign,
a
election
campaign. Okay, and now we're in a campaign, and next week, and we have elections for the state government here in Baden-Württemberg. And what I say, the campaign, it's if you see this, the slogans, I say it's for people in the primary school, because there is nothing, and I think how much rainforest they cut down for these advertisements. So, but people, it's for them normal to go there to do this, and everyone do this, and then it's okay, and I could drive my car, I could have my house, and I could go on holiday to Mallorca, and then it's okay. And okay, there are some problems, but we have got the best country in the world. It's
Do they
also in
say that there too? Is that something they
no,
say?
no, no, no. In Germany, they don't say
They don't say that. Nobody
they
says
don't
that.
say we have
They
the
might
best one,
think it, but yeah.
but they say it's the best country due to living standards or
Right. They'll
like
qualify it. Not like
yeah.
here. Well, they'll just say the best, like number one, like yeah, yeah. Eat
So
shit,
I
world.
think
Yeah.
and if you're an anarchist and they say countries are shit, so it's you have a little problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, Trump was talking about certain countries being shithole countries. That's different from just being against the state generally. That's a that's a whole different thing.
And he also said these anarchists.
Oh yeah, and then well, so that's another thing that's changed in the past month. Incidentally, is Portland, Seattle, and New York City are no longer officially considered to be anarchist jurisdictions by the State Department or by the by the Justice Department, the Attorney General. The new Attorney General removed the that designation of anarchist jurisdiction on Portland, Seattle, and New York City. So we're not anarchist jurisdiction anymore.
Okay.
I mean, that's what Trump had declared, that these three cities were anarchist jurisdictions because basically, crime was so rampant and basically Antifa ruled the streets in their worldview, in the worldview of the Trump administration, not in the reality.
Yeah, but I think he's very creative. These conspiracy people, they are very creative. What they could do in their mind, I don't know, but how they and
you
that
know,
people believe it. I couldn't understand it, but
I mean, even also not just them, the conspiracy theorists, but just any regular media people anywhere. I mean, just anyone with a camera. I mean, what one thing that I've noticed over many many years now is sometimes there will be very large protests happening in this country and in others, and the media will totally ignore them, and you'll hear nothing about the protest on any media, right? And then other times there will be big protests and they get a lot of coverage. And then other times there will be very small protests that get no coverage, or very small protests that get huge coverage. And all that really varies. But if you're looking at TV or listening to the radio and trying to figure out what's going on, it's very confusing because, a person with a mic and a couple of people with cameras can make a crowd of 200 people look like a big deal. If you're really in the middle of this crowd of 200 very loud people, well organized, marching, loud people with banners and a sound system and a truck, 200 people can look like a lot of people. And in a movie set, of course, if you're making a movie, 200 people, you can make that look like a crowd of thousands, by, doing your fancy stuff with the cameras, right? That's how it works with making movies, right? And it's no different from, with making news, So, I mean, it's just, I don't know where I'm going with this really, but it's just since Trump has been in office, actually, especially, it's been very strange, the coverage, because you would get the impression that the whole city of Portland is burning, when it's really just like, one, statue. It's like, some fire next to a statue. I mean, it's like, and they make it seem like that's the whole downtown. Or a few. Yeah, it can be very misleading, and so many of the protests that have involved, low hundreds of people participating, which is very impressive for a regularly occurring protest to have that many people at it every day. But still, they make it look like it's the whole city where everybody's in the streets and business has stopped and nobody's going to work, and that is not and has never been the situation.
but I think I also when in a few years ago, about 10 years ago, when I went to a demonstration, and sometimes when there was no violence, all the camera teams are going away. They don't film what people say on the stage. Or no, if there's no violence, you go. perhaps
That's right. That's
burning
all
police
they're
cars and
interested in.
nothing. Oh, no,
All the
this is no
cameras go
fun
to
for
the
the
burning
media.
police car.
Yeah, I think, but it changed a little bit because now you got these media like YouTube, where you could um, have your own videos. It's on the one hand, it's good. So in former times, I went to a demonstration and I filmed myself also. But in that times, we don't have YouTube. Now we have YouTube, but then there is these conspiracy people that say that is just reality and all the media is lying. So it's it's very hard to have a really the middle way between the YouTube things and what the media, the state media, or the private media, the professionals, what they broadcast. So I and most people are just watching their kinds of channels, no? I think if someone watches CNN, he would never watch the other one.
Yeah, now that's become more and more true over here. This total like division of
Fox,
the
yes.
liberal and the conservative channels, CNN and Fox, that are totally partisan. They used to pretend to kind of represent different sides, and they at least with those outlets, they no longer pretend. You know, other ones do pretend to try to be taking different sides, but yeah.
But it's
But of course it also, yeah, and then of course there's the small media that is just trying to get eyeballs, and the more sensational stuff will get more eyeballs. So of course it makes more sense to cover anything that gets violent, or any property destruction. But yeah, with the big media, I think they love to cover violence and property destruction because it always discredits social movements in their eyes, and that's generally what they want to do, is discredit these movements that want to change the way things are, because it's the owners of the media are the same people that run the government generally, the big billionaire corporations that are in control of so much of the press. They have the same interests as the ruling class generally, so we
so
can't count on them to tell us what's happening. Although, of course, they'll tell us all about the dangerous conspiracy theories and the fake news that we shouldn't believe. But meanwhile, they're giving us their own form of fake news, and then that, which is the problem. That's why people believe so many conspiracy theories, because it's the so-called objective press is not at all objective, and is
yeah.
giving us all kinds of bullshit.
Yes, you have to have medias that are not controlled by the government and that are not controlled by conspiracy theorists. But so in the matter of really broadcast channels, so yeah, you have to have a lot of money to have so that you get another opinion to the paper. I think that's in between that, in between the big ones and the conspiracy people and the capitalists. So I think that's really hard to do.
It's
Um,
very
uh,
hard. I mean, we need what was always needed is real good journalists, well-funded investigative journalists, and then of course, if you're well-funded investigative journalists, then there's often going to be state funding involved, and then if you're going to be exposing politicians and getting state funding, it's always a bit of a problem, and you see how that plays out in lots of countries. I mean, this is why I say generally, and a lot of other people would say the same thing, that if you're one, like, you might get a lot of good international coverage from say BBC, but if you're looking for coverage on anything happening in Britain, and don't look to BBC. And it's the same with anything. If RT Russia Today. I mean, they do some very good coverage on things that are happening in the United States, but very bad coverage on what's going on in Russia. You know, and it's just true of most networks. And there's political reasons for this, and it's just how it is with journalists trying to do good work, but also trying to deal with the strictures of state funding and censorship, whether it comes direct or indirect. I think the worst and most common forms of censorship are indirect forms.
So, what media in the US do you think? Because I don't know the landscape, the media landscape in the US. What media you say? Okay, there's really an open discussion, especially okay, that is your YouTube channel, but besides that.
I would not recommend my YouTube channel as a primary source of information. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there, at least in terms of news analysis. But in terms of people actually doing real news coverage on the ground, I think there's a lot less of that than there really needs to be, but it's there. I mean, but it's always a struggle. I mean, in Portland, covering the protests, I think was largely a volunteer effort, and I think mostly it wasn't paid journalists employed by some company to be doing most of that coverage, and so most of the documenting of police brutality was done by volunteers who, if they hadn't been there, there would have been no documentation for thousands of acts of police brutality that have taken place over the past year in this city. But I mean, yeah, certainly somebody, Stephen McRandall on Facebook is saying Democracy Now, and Democracy Now does a lot of good stuff Monday through Friday, democracynow.org, and they're on radio stations around the country as well, and on video and audio. I wish they had better music breaks. They mostly play dead musicians that won Grammys as the average music break. But and there's just so many good musicians who are not dead and did not win a Grammy that they might want to play in their music breaks. I won't mention any names, but
Yeah, okay. I understand.
but then there's a lot of other good stuff. I mean, Counterpunch, which is where I write a lot. Counterpunch.org, great source of especially news analysis. I think Al Jazeera does a lot of good coverage here and around the world. Al Jazeera English, although I've heard a lot of complaints about the political bias of their Arabic channel, but the English channel is different and more aimed at global news coverage. And BBC World Service does some good stuff. That has some reporters on the ground. The Guardian, they have 55 reporters covering U.S. So that's they have a staff that's doing a lot of good coverage of a lot of stuff that nobody else would be writing about otherwise. There's The Intercept, and that's doing a lot of good coverage. It's there's it's out there. It's just not enough. I mean, there's just not enough. I mean, there used to be a lot more journalists, or there was a lot more journalism because there were a lot more newspapers. I mean, the whole model of putting out journalism has generally, changed so much. It's collapsed, basically. And I mean, journalism survives in many countries because of massive government spending and intervention. But that's why BBC exists. That's why, the newspaper industry in Sweden exists. I mean, because of government spending, it doesn't have any basis for existing economically these days, whereas it used to be newspapers and other media could just survive without any government help, and there was so much media, a long time ago. I mean, just looking at the the anarchist and the socialist press in the United States in the German language. Just look at the German language socialist press in the United States. I mean, there were German language socialist newspapers across this country, 120 years ago, and Italian and Polish and I mean, it was a vibrant industry that was based on selling newspapers, and it was a very simple concept. You printed stuff that people wanted to read. They bought the paper for a relatively low price, and there you go. You paid your reporters. You printed more papers. I mean, there were anarchist publications in Italian that had a circulation of tens of thousands, in this country 100 years ago, until they were all shut down by government decree, basically, in 1921, I believe, when the law passed. What was it called? The Insurrection Act, that basically said, basically everything that these anarchists were talking about was illegal, and they basically stopped publishing or went to prison.
So, David, nice talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you, Frank.
We have got talking about a lot about the media, and so it was very interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Hope you get
Hope
well.
I didn't go off in too many random tangents, but I bill this as a conversation of random tangents. It says on the bottom, so it's random. So this one definitely lived up to its random. But anyway, I hope it was interesting for somebody out there.
It's always random, I think. So,
I think so.
We don't have a plan, but we talk about it, so it's okay. Okay, David. Then have a nice month, and we see us next month. And perhaps you have got a little bit more hair then. I don't know.
I'll have a little bit more hair by then. Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, do it.